Hello and welcome to this channel. My name is Padraig. I'm a dairy vet from California, or living in California, not from California. And this is a video in a series I was going to make about teaching you the basics in cattle husbandry and the process of buying and raising your own animals for food production. So whether you're somebody that wants to get into this world of homesteading or agriculture, or you're somebody who's already involved and wants to learn a little bit more about the process. My goals here are to kind of go through those essentials and some of the husbandry and the knowledge you need to help you succeed in that area and share a bit of my expertise, I guess. So this video is going to be on cattle breeds and how to make the right selection for what your goals are out of your system. We're going to talk through the different breeds available and how to decide what it is that you think you need and how to utilize that best. So the first thing I want to talk about is the basic classification of the bovine family. Bovines are split into Bos Indicus and Bos Taurus. So Bos Indicus, first of all, is what you would consider the tropical cattle. So they are derived from the zebu in India, and I'm going to bring up a slideshow of pictures of breeds here. So this first guy right here, this is an example of what we would consider a Bos Indicus. So this Bos Indicus is a branch of that bovine family overall. Bos Indicus are the cattle with these kind of large ear, humpback kind of appearance, and they're what you'd associate with tropical countries, India, African countries, Saharan regions. They exist in the United States as well. They're probably not as popular in Europe, and they definitely have a role. I'm not going to be focusing on the breadth of Bos Indicus in this video today, but they are potentially more resilient and more resistant to some of the infectious diseases that their Bos Taurus cousins will get, especially ticks, biting insects, and some of the infectious diseases that can be pretty devastating. They're a little bit more resistant to that, but they don't have that same level of genetic specification as what exists in the range of breeds that are in the Bos Taurus family. So they are related and they can be crossbred, but they're a separate little genetic family. And just, I guess for our purposes, they're not as efficient or as economical traditionally considered to be as economical for either beef or dairy production. So then that takes me to the Bos Taurus family, which is then your classic domestic cattle breeds. That was probably what you think of when you think of the word cattle, the black and whites or the blacks, the beef and the dairy breeds. And they all fall within the Bos Taurus, and it's a much, maybe I'm kind of naive in assuming just because I'm more familiar, but it's a much more a wider and more, I guess, genetically developed group of cattle with a wide variety of different breeds that are specified for different things and different objectives, and that's what we're going to talk about. So what are your objectives and how to pick the breed that suits that? So for this video, I'll talk about the dairy breeds, and then I'll follow on with a video on beef breeds after that, and we'll discuss the dual purpose and how you can use these as we go. With that, I'm going to split this family of breeds into the purposes for our ease, and kind of this is the conventional way we think about our cattle breeds, but for ease of understanding what these animals are for and how we can use them, we generally consider them as either a dairy breed, a beef breed, and then there's dual purpose, which, like it sounds, dual purpose of both the dairy and beef. So things like genetic selection, through line breeding or intentional crossbreeding, as well as more modern reproductive techniques now that we have, like artificial insemination and embryo transfer. They've really allowed these breeds to become very, very specified for what their purpose is. And that has an advantage because if your industry is specific to producing milk. You want to utilize the animals that are the best for that. So it makes sense, but you just need to understand what you're getting from each of these breeds and if they're going to get you where you want to be. Our dairy specific breeds now today can produce volumes of milk that way exceeds what they ever would have needed to produce their calf, because of the way we've bred them and the way we've selected them. And equally, our beef breeds convert feed into muscle at rates at which they would never have needed to, I guess, originally. And they're now much more efficient at producing a product at the end for us through thousands of years, I guess, of selection and development. And then the dual purpose breeds, they offer a good solution to an animal that could be a bit more resilient, a bit more versatile, and can kind of be customized to your needs depending on how you want to utilize that. So the first breed I'm going to go through is our Holstein cow. So this is the black and white milk cow, and they strictly are a milk producing breed. They definitely produce the most milk out of all of the breeds of cows. Our Holstein is our champion milk producer by volume. They're quite a large animal, so you can see here in this picture they're all in their free stall barn, loafing about. But they're quite tall. They're one of the taller breeds of cattle, but not as muscly or developed or strong as some of our beef breeds. But they can still be up to 700 kg or 1,500 pounds as an adult cow easily, and the bulls are even much bigger. They can be, I guess, managed in different housing systems. They're well suited to this inside or intensive style and respond very well to high management. So I don't think I would recommend this breed if you are a rank beginner. They definitely give back what you put in, but the management might be a little bit difficult if you're not used to handling cows, because they have a huge metabolic demand due to the fact that they produce so much milk and they've been so intensively bred for this purpose. They are the most populous of all the dairy breeds, but they are very specifically spec'd to producing milk. So they do one thing very well, but you definitely need to be aware of managing them properly, making sure they get that right nutrition, because milk comes from calories and calories comes from the food they eat, so they need to be fed right. And then other management points in terms of calving and handling, they're very curious, they're quite docile. The bulls can be, I guess, relatively dangerous. They are very comfortable with human handling. So a bull that's very comfortable with humans will also be potentially a bit too familiar with humans and can be a bit dangerous. But this is definitely the number one dairy breed if that is what you want. If you're going 100% for volume of milk produced, this is the breed that can't be beaten. And here I have another picture of a Holstein, so you see just how tall she is. This is a show cow, obviously, with this massive udder conformation, and a very tall frame. So that will be our kind of our milky or our dairy frame, where they kind of angle in from the back. They have wide hips and they angle up to the shoulders. Next, so this looks very similar, but this is a different breed of cow, even though she's probably partially Holstein. But this is a Friesian. So I forgot to mention, Holsteins are a Dutch breed originally, but now they're very widespread in the US and Canada, and I guess the rest of anywhere there's milking cows. But our Friesian cow is also from Holland, but it is a smaller animal. It's genetically different, but I think modern Friesians, it's difficult to get a modern Friesian that doesn't have some amount of Holstein genetics in it. There's been a lot of mixing, but they're a smaller animal. They have lower production, obviously, similar kind of milk composition, and they're maybe an easier animal to maintain a little bit. Obviously, you get less milk for your efforts, but definitely, very efficient at converting grass and feed to milk. So for your low cost production system, a great efficient choice. Smaller, easier animal, also a great milking choice there. And then they definitely can be used, just like the Holstein, to be crossed with beef breeds for your crossbreeds and your dual purpose calves if you want to get meat out of the progeny of these. Then the next big dairy breed is Jersey. The Jersey is definitely our next most common dairy breed. It is famous for its massive milk component. So its volume of milk isn't necessarily as high. Well, it isn't. It's not as high as what the Holstein can produce, but it's known for superior production in terms of fat and protein within the milk. So milk is about 12%. Milk is mostly water, unfortunately. A lot of it is just water, but milk is about 12% of solids. Those solids then are, our staple nutrients are protein, fat, and carbohydrate. The carbohydrate being primarily lactose. And, a really important consideration when picking a dairy animal is how much of those components are present in the milk, and it's not the same for all animals. Breed has a huge impact on it. The age of the animal, the lactation, how many calves they've had before, what age they were when they calved, what they're eating, all those things can affect that. But Jerseys genetically are definitely the king of producing very, very high fat and very high protein. So if you're in a place where you get paid on solids, obviously this is a big reason to pick the Jersey. If you're utilizing this milk for your own use and you want to produce cheeses or butters out of it, the Jersey is great that way. It, I guess, is a much smaller animal. It can, they're up to 1,000 pounds as adults. Definitely not as tall and big and imposing as the Holstein. Very, very, very friendly as well. Easy to calf. Jerseys definitely, people say Jerseys calve anything. Obviously, you can push that and test that, but Jerseys usually calve quite easily. They potentially have less diseases, are less susceptible to some of the, the maintenance issues and some of the diseases that you might come across with your high intense Holstein production. But Jerseys are more susceptible genetically to milk fever. Milk fever is a disorder of calcium balance immediately post calving. So when your animal calves, the day she calves, obviously she starts producing milk from that calving on, and her milk production starts increasing. And milk has a very high percentage of calcium. That's why it's such a great that's one of the reasons why it's a great food. But that calcium has to come from somewhere, and because our modern animals produce such high amounts of milk, calcium demand to make milk is so high that they need to get that calcium supply from somewhere. A lot of it comes from bone calcium, but the majority of that supply comes from the diet. But unfortunately, when you go from nothing to a huge amount of calcium production, there is a bit of a lag in getting enough food in or getting that calcium out of your bone. And if that isn't balanced properly by the diet or anticipated dietarily, you get this disorder where they become hypocalcemic and they become weak and they become kind of flaccid and paralyzed and will die if it's serious enough. In Jerseys, maybe partly because of how many solids they push in their milk, so they're pushing more calcium as well, but also I think genetically they have a predisposition to more milk fever, so that's definitely a consideration. You get more milk, but you have to be aware of what's required to make that milk right, and calcium and calories definitely are needed to make milk. The other thing I wanted to say was Jersey bulls can be very aggressive, not a safe animal to have around. Also, we're still talking about dairy breeds in this video, so obviously the Jersey bull calves can't make milk. They don't have a lot of value. They're not an animal, and also because of the handling and the safety, they're not an animal to keep around really. It's funny that the smaller cow can be more aggressive, but Jersey bulls definitely are notorious for being highly aggressive towards people, so I wouldn't keep them on your farm or castrate them if you are keeping them as steers. But unfortunately, Jersey bulls don't have much value because of their poor beef production. So if you do not want Jersey heifers out of your cows, you can utilize beef breeds in the kind of dual purpose idea we talked about. But you can utilize beef sires to, mitigate some of that poor beefiness from the Jersey line. And you can also use now sex sorted semen if you're artificially inseminating your cow. So that's semen that has been sorted to filter out the male sperm and try and only get the female sperm, so you get a higher chance of your baby coming out as a female, and that can kind of reduce your risk of getting these Jersey bulls that you really don't want. So that's a perk of modern technology. Next breed in the dairy catalog is our Ayrshire. So Ayrshires are a Scottish breed originally. They, look a little bit like the Friesian we were just talking about, but they're red and white usually. You can definitely get red and white Holsteins. The breed standard, I guess, is black and white or red and white, but the black and white is much more common. Just because it's red and white as a Holstein doesn't mean it's not a Holstein. For the Ayrshire, they have this kind of light red color with white. And they're a smaller animal. They're a bit more fine. They're not as small as the Jersey, but they're definitely smaller than our Holstein and our Friesian, well, kind of comparable to the Friesian. They're known for having great udder composition, and really, I suppose, great milk yield. Not as much volume or potentially solids as our two Jerseys, are dairy superstars, but great kind of overall dairy breed. They're pretty resilient, and they're pretty good on kind of rugged terrain or grazing. So if that's kind of the environment you're working with, maybe that's a good potential animal for you. Easy to calf, pretty resilient, so they're kind of an easier going potentially animal. And one of the things that I guess they're known for, people say about them, is that they have the ideal drinking milk. Their balance of fat, protein, and lactose is such that it's I guess the nicest tasting, apparently, but that's a subjective thing. But if you were planning on getting an easy to manage cow that you can graze pretty low expense, potentially this is a good dairy breed for you. And that then takes us to the brown Swiss. We're leaving England or Scotland, and we're going to Switzerland. So the brown Swiss is a little bit similar looking to the Jersey. See, with this big ears and this kind of frame, it's a bit small. It's small as well, but not as small as the Jersey. It comes from Switzerland. So these are these alpine grazing cows. So these are still used in Switzerland very commonly and very popularly for grazing these mountain pastures. And they go out, apparently, you can take portable milking machines up the mountains and take your milking machine to your cow, because they're all over the Alpines, wherever. But these are very long-lived, long-lasting, very resilient, good milk production. And I guess this cow is kind of not coming back around, but being re-recognized for how good its potential milk yield is and its component yield. So it's a breed that I guess it's been shadowed by the popularity of the Holstein and the Jersey, but it has an excellent fat and protein ratio with very high fat production potentially. So if you're a person that is interested in that solid yield rather than volume, because that's how you're paid, this is a good breed opportunity there. And I guess the brown Swiss, the other thing that they are known for is having good persistence across their lactation. So we talk about lactation peaks as a curve. When a cow calves, obviously her milk yield isn't very high, but it rapidly increases. And to 60 to 90 days, depending on the breed, you hit a peak where they're now producing the most milk they're going to produce for that lactation until they need a new calf. And then it starts dwindling down, and it dwindles down to a point where then you decide to dry that cow off. So you cease milking it, and you allow that cow a break for its mammary tissue to regenerate before its next calf is due to arrive. So you usually want to allow at least 60 days of a break. So that, depending on when your cow goes into calf, that's going to dictate how long that whole interval is. And for some of these breeds, that goal might be exactly 1 year. So we want that calf to drop onto the ground on the same day every year. So we have a 365 day lactation interval, allowing us a 60-day dry period. So this cow is milking for 305 days. Our high-producing cows, we might not want to dry them off that early. If we were working with a Holstein, their milk production might still be so high at 305 days that you would actually it wouldn't be worth your while to dry them off. Then you'd be losing money because they have more milk to push. So you want to delay when you breed those cows so that they don't, get ready to calf, because when the new calf comes and the new lactation starts, there's no stopping that. But these brown Swiss, they're known for having good persistence. So they mightn't hit a very high peak, but they maintain their milk yield. So if you're looking for a cow that has a consistent milk supply year round, potentially some of these brown Swiss are good for that. And a good overall kind of component with balance with volume yielding cow. Then we'll go to the Shorthorn. So this is, and I'll talk about the beef Shorthorn in my next video, but this is your, I guess, one of those kind of dual purpose breeds. So there is dairy Shorthorns, there's beef Shorthorns, there's true dual purpose Shorthorns that are like a very well blended mix of both, and then there's dairy emphasis and beef emphasis Shorthorns. So Shorthorn is a very old breed type. It's from North England. It's been around for a long time, and I think it was a breed that was very, very popular before, you know, the modern genetics that we see today of the Holstein or the, you know, the specialized beef breeds kind of took over in those realms. The Shorthorn was definitely something my father and his grandfather milked before Friesians kind of took over Ireland. But you know, they were very, very popular, and because of that, their ability to, you know, their use as a dual purpose, they're a very popular kind of homesteading or home rearing breed, because you get great milk, but you also get great beef potential out of the calf. So depending on the genetics you get, that'll dictate how beefy or how milky your cow is. So the picture here is obviously a show animal. This is a show in Ireland. I think it's Tullamore Show. And that is a dairy Shorthorn specifically. So if you remember the picture of the Holsteins and the Friesians earlier, we have like the wide hips that kind of narrow in at the shoulders into a triangle. So that is our hallmark kind of dairy conformation, whereas beef animals should be kind of like broad at the back and broad all the way front, like a rectangle. So this is a dairy Shorthorn, and you know, their milk production is good. They have moderate yield, moderate components. They're easy to keep. They're easy to feed. They're definitely a good, you know, throwback breed. I think they've become more popular recently. Again, they're coming back around a little bit. Their popularity has increased, but they're definitely a good versatile breed if that's what you're looking for. Two more dairy breeds to look at is the Mountbeliarde. So this cow immediately looks much more muscly than some of the other cows we've talked about. So this is another cow that potentially could be dual purpose, right? But is still very well known and renowned for its milk yield. And I guess the advantage of having a dual purpose cow that has good milk yield is if you are deciding to raise your animals off of the cow. So you're allowing your calves to suck the mother for as long as you can, for, you know, 5-6 months, whatever, if the true suckler cow or cow calf operation, which is a great tactic to cheaply and very, very, very efficiently raise big calves, because milk has a lot of calories, a lot of energy. It's a great way to grow very big and very heavy calves. But that's where animals like, I guess, the Shorthorn and the Mountbeliarde shine. You know, they have great beef conformation and beef possibility, but also very good milk yield. So that milk yield, you know, allows you to feed that calf, but also if you wanted to raise your calves separately and feed them and then keep that milk and milk that milk for yourself, you also have that possibility there. So they have good fertility. They're pretty easy to calf. You know, excellent beef potential. So the Mountbeliarde is this French breed. They're a good choice if that's what you're looking for, that versatile animal. And then the other dual purpose kind of dairy breed that I want to talk about in this video is the Fleckvieh and the Simmental. So I'll just show the Simmental picture. So this is kind of our Simmental cow, our classic Simmental cow, and back here to the Fleckvieh. So the difference between the Simmental and the Fleckvieh is that the Fleckvieh is from Austria and the Simmental is Swiss. So the Simmental is kind of the Swiss Fleckvieh, but it's not that they just originated from either. They are separate kind of breeds. They're very, very similar, but they do have different genetics because, you know, they were bred in Austria and Switzerland differently. So the Fleckvieh is still considered a milking cow. This is a cow that you know, has great milk yield, actually has a lot of milk volume. So comparable almost to our Holsteins in terms of how much volume they push out. Good components, good fertility, and a bit more resilient. So what might be popular, or what, you know, might be a good idea, is Holsteins crossed with these Fleckvieh genetics to maintain milk production. And I think that's something that people are seeing, that they can cross in these Fleckvieh genetics and change the profile of their herd a bit, so they're not pure Holstein, you know, very tall, very dairy specified animals. and get some of this, some of the advantage from the Fleckvieh breed while maintaining that milk production and not losing it. And also, the possibility of, good beef genetics for the calves coming off them. And then the Simmental, which is more classically considered a beef animal, but also has great milk potential. So where I've seen this animal used most is in the cow-calf, the suckler kind of style of rearing, where you are letting your calves suck off of the mother for as long as possible to get the calf as big as possible. So they're very, very beefy, very strong, big, powerful breed with great milk production as well. So they're classically more of a beef breed, but I guess dual purpose. If you wanted to milk a Simmental, you could cross it with something a bit more dairy specified and then utilize your cross breed. So the dual purpose idea is really cross breeds, where you would cross dairy with beef sires, can really give you great dual purpose breeds. I think something like Angus crossed with Friesian can give you cows that are very, very muscly, very beefy, but with great milk production. And then, like I said, that can be utilized to either grow that calf or raise the calves separately and keep that milk and actually milk those cows. But if your goal is 100% milk production, if you're shipping milk to a producer and you're getting a milk check, you're going to want a dairy specified breed. And if you are trying to finish heavy calves and get your beef check, you definitely want a beef breed. So if your goal is something more versatile, something more kind of like homegrown, something that you can use yourself, have calves that you can butcher for yourself, and then also have milk that you can use for home use or for sale on a small scale. These dual purpose breeds, or some of these dairy breeds we talked about, are a good potential, or a crossbreed between some of them. So that is an overview of the kind of just some of the dairy breeds. These are the main ones. There's obviously lots more. It's a big diverse class. We didn't talk about the gyr or the zebu, which are the Bos Indicus animals, but I think I just wanted to go through and give a bit of insight into the difference between the breeds, what people think about them, what you can do with them, and what might be a good idea. Obviously, if you have more specific questions, you can, I guess, send comments. Deciding what breed you're going to go with may just be availability and then also your needs, because what genetics exist nearby and are available to you is going to dictate that a lot. You can't really ship animals that easily, cattle by animals that easily intrastate or across country borders. There's a lot of biosecurity considerations, and transport is stressful on these animals. What's available in your area is definitely going to have a big impact on this, but you can utilize crossbreeding to get closer to what you want if that is an issue. You don't really want to be purchasing new animals all of the time. What's really, really valuable is you having good cows, good proven cows. And then the most popular thing that people will use is the artificial semen or artificial insemination of semen from bull studs, which is fine. You can use that very heavily to increase your genetics by getting good cows, and then even better daughters by using semen from very high merit bulls. But you definitely do not want to be purchasing and bringing in a lot of new animals, because you're not going to really know what you have, what's working. You want to, I guess, try and pick a breed or a breed profile and start building it. And you get cows mature pretty early. Like they'll have their first calf at 2 years. They're ready to start breeding a little bit after a year of age. So it doesn't take too long to start building that inventory and start moving it towards what you want. So that would be my main recommendation, is really to to focus on building your inventory of genetics, and that'll really become very valuable to you in the future. So thank you for listening to this video, and then the next one in series will be on beef breeds.